Hello and welcome to this online event to commemorate Holocaust Memorial Day in 2022. This event has been organised jointly by the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office and the Israeli Embassy. This year's theme for Holocaust Memorial Day is One Day. Because of the COVID pandemic, this event is being held online today, but this does not detract from its importance. I want to thank the Israeli Embassy and Ambassador Hotoveli for jointly hosting this event, and to the Foreign Secretary, Lord Pickles and Lord Ahmed for their contributions. The Holocaust has a personal resonance for me, as my grandfather, a British soldier in World War II, helped liberate Bergen-Belsen concentration camp in 1945. He never forgot the horrors of what he saw, but like many of his generation, did not feel able to openly speak about his experiences for many years. It's a particular honour that this year Lily Ebert, a Holocaust survivor, is joining us. Many of you will be aware that Lily has a huge online following, including on TikTok, which she uses to communicate across the generations. Dov Foreman, Lily's great-grandson, will join Lily. Today's cantor, Johnny Turgle, is also the grandson of a Holocaust survivor. I would like to thank them all for joining us today.
"80 years ago, on a cold day in January, top-ranking Nazis gathered in a house by a lake on the outskirts of Berlin at Wannsee to discuss the exploitation and the mass murder of Jewish people. Under the polite euphemism of the final solution, children would die alongside their parents and their grandparents. No one would be spared. Today, across the globe, there are still malicious people who actively deny the historic reality of the Holocaust and seek to minimize the extent of the atrocities committed to Jewish people by the Nazis and their accomplices during the Second World War. They doubt the use of gas chambers, of mass shootings, of deliberate starvation, and of the intended genocide of the whole Jewish people. They even take this lunacy to a step further, into further madness by blaming the Jewish people for exaggerating and manufacturing the Shoah for political or financial gain. Even going so far as to suggest that the Shoah itself resulted from a conspiracy plotted by the Jews. We see in some Middle Eastern countries state-sponsored Holocaust denial and the official peddling of anti-Semitic tropes. Of course, in the grand tradition of Wannsee, it's wrapped in euphemisms. They say we're not anti-Semitic, we're just anti-Zionist. As if there's any real difference. Below the surface is the same hatred, the same intolerance, and the same degree and desire to hurt Jews. We do Holocaust remembrance a disservice if we remember the dead and forget the present persecution of Jewish people across the world. The eventual goal of Holocaust denial is to recast history, to erase the legacy and the reality of mass murder of Jewish people. Deborah Lipstadt, a friend of many of us, put this succinctly. For Holocaust deniers to be right, who would have to be wrong? The victims? The survivors, the bystanders, and above all, the perpetrators. They might have said, I didn't have a choice, I was forced. But nevertheless, they say, I did it. There is a new worry of Holocaust distortion, more mainstream, but just as pernicious. It doubts numbers, assigns different descriptions to places. Death camps are redesignated as transit camps. Contemporary events are compared to the Holocaust. Collaborators of the Nazis are wiped from the national memory. Holocaust distortion can be found in all levels of society and is far from being a fringe phenomenon. From facts twisted on the internet to opportunist statements made by politicians, misleading exhibitions at museums, and most recently comparing measures to combat COVID-19 to the Holocaust. We've seen lockdown restrictions likened to Nazi persecution of the Jews. We've witnessed anti-vaxxers and other pinning yellow stars to their chest across Europe. Nowhere is this clearer than online, where distorted memes and posts spread like wildfire, luring users down a rabbit hole of increasing extremist content. All distortion, whether intended or not, feeds into anti-Semitic narratives and can lead to more violent forms of anti-Semitism. As the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance Honorary Chairman, Professor Yuda Bauer, notes, a half-truth is worse than a full lie. Distortion of the Holocaust comes from various sources, and it's not unique to one particular worldwide view. It can be found on both the right and the left of the political spectrum, across religious, ethnic lines, and also informed in part by a broader culture of denial in present discourse. As the UK's Special Envoy in post-Holocaust issues, I'm particularly concerned by international efforts to excuse or minimise the Holocaust or its elements, including the role of collaborators and allies of Nazi Germany. I'm also concerned with the growing state-sponsored manipulation of Holocaust history to sow political discord within and outside our country's borders. We should remember those who put their liberty or even their lives at risk. They should be honoured. But we must remember that they were a tiny minority that bravely stood up. Most occupied peoples did nothing, either out of fear, or sympathy, or greed. Most of us can imagine being a victim of the Holocaust. Few can imagine being a perpetrator. If we pretend that the potential violence of the Holocaust does not lurk within us all, we do a great disservice to the past. That is why the work undertaken by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance is so important. We must promote fact-based knowledge about the history of the Holocaust and strengthen media and information literacy. I'm pleased to say that this has already started, and countries worldwide pledged in the recent Malmö Forum to take concrete steps to further Holocaust remembrance and combat anti-Semitism. This landmark event came 20 years after the Stockholm Forum on the Holocaust laid the foundation for contemporary action on Holocaust education, remembrance and research. When Holocaust distortion poses the most significant threat to this legacy, we cannot stop our fight for the truth. We must resolve that never again does not become the empty echo of past good intentions. As individuals, we will guard against indifference and learn to see ourselves in the face of strangers. As a community, we will stand against ignorance and anti-Semitism. We will keep the remembrance flame shining bright against Holocaust, distortion, and denial.
It is an honour to join you here today to be sharing this virtual platform with the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, with Lord Pickles, and of course the survivors. I want to thank the FCDO and everyone who has worked on this important ceremony. Each year International Holocaust Memorial Day provides people with the opportunity to unite, to remember the victims of the Holocaust, and for governments to reaffirm their commitment that never again should such an unspeakable crime be allowed to take place. For me, Holocaust Memorial Day is about the personal as well as the international. Let us take this day to hear the testimony of the Holocaust survivors, to listen to their stories and remember each one of the 6 million Jews brutally murdered by the Nazi regime were individuals who their lives were cut short. It is our duty to bear witness to the accounts of the Holocaust survivors and ensure their stories never stop being told. Let us also remember the brave men and women who risked their lives to save the Jews of Europe, whose stories are not always known. Today I think of author Ida Cook and her sister Louise, 2 British women and civil servants. The sisters risked their freedom and their lives to save Jewish refugees seeking sanctuary in Britain. Ida and Louise Cook are remembered as righteous among the nations by Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Remembrance Center in Israel, alongside other courageous people who refused to be a bystander while Jewish people were systematically prosecuted. To honor those who were not saved, we must protect and preserve the memory of the Holocaust so that the future generations understand the true horror and learn where anti-Semitism leads. A task that becomes more difficult as time goes on, but a task that is as vital as ever. This year, we're seeing a horrifying rise in anti-Semitism. I've seen this myself on the streets of London. In the last year alone, we have seen Jewish people across the country being attacked and harassed simply because they are Jewish. Anti-Semitism keeps evolving, so that the Jews of this country must deal with the modern version of anti-Semitism, but as well as traditional hatred we have suffered for years. We are at a critical moment of history, and we must ensure the lessons of the past are told frequently so the next generation do not forget. We, the State of Israel, are thankful to the British government for their friendship, solidarity against anti-Semitism, and their work to commemorate the Holocaust. The difficult truth is that Ida and Louise Cook wouldn't have needed to risk their lives if the State of Israel had existed. Israel has provided safety and security for Jewish refugees since its re-establishment in 1948. It is why I'm intensely proud to represent my country, living proof of the strength and resilience of the Jewish people. So today, we remember the 6 million, the families that were torn apart, the stories that were cut tragically short, and we must do everything in our power to keep the promise of never again.
Good morning, everyone. This annual event is an opportunity to honour the 6 million Jewish men, women and children who were murdered in the Holocaust. We mourn their loss, we pay tribute to those who survived, and we pledge that we will never forget. Remembering is not a passive act. It's an expression of fidelity to those who perished, and an act of duty to future generations. Elie Wiesel said that when you listen to a witness, you become a witness. We can all play our part in preserving the testimony of survivors and ensuring it is constantly renewed as part of the collective memory. Indeed, I believe it is our responsibility to do so, and we're working to make sure that this responsibility is fulfilled. By 2025, we will open a new National Holocaust Memorial and Learning Centre in central London. It will stand as a constant reminder of why we must be relentless in the fight against hate and anti-Semitism. We're also proud to support the work of the Wiener Holocaust Library. The Wiener Library hosts a digital copy of the International Tracing Service. This invaluable resource helps friends and families of Holocaust victims to find out what happened to those they loved and lost. One survivor, Peter Brees, has been kind enough to share his story. He fled Czechoslovakia as part of the Kindertransport and found refuge and welcome in the UK. Many years later, the ITS archive showed him for the first time precisely what happened to his beloved uncle, grandparents and cousins. I cannot imagine how important it must be to uncover the fate of a loved one in this way. More than 80 years after these events took place, this archive can still bring comfort to survivors and relatives, finally bringing information to light after decades of not knowing. So we must preserve these memories, and we must be vigilant about those who would spread the poison of prejudice today. The British government is committed to combating the rise of anti-Semitism in all its forms. We have a long-standing track record of standing up for the rights and those of all faiths and beliefs. We will continue our work to that end, at home and abroad. My friend Lord Pickles, as the UK's Special Envoy for post-Holocaust issues, is ensuring that Britain plays a leading international role in remembering the Holocaust and addressing anti-Semitism. We were one of the founding signatories of the Stockholm Declaration in 2000. Together we pledged that the terrible events of the Holocaust would remain forever seared in our collective memory. This commitment was confirmed by our participation at the Malmö Forum last October. We're also an active member of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, and we look forward to holding the chair in 2024. This will be a moment to demonstrate once again Britain's leadership in responding to anti-Semitism and in keeping the flame of memory burning bright. As Peter Brees wrote, those of us fortunate enough to have been saved owe it to those lost to record and remember what happened and to teach generations to come. We all share in that duty. Let's commit ourselves to that task anew. Thank you.
My name is Dov Foreman, and I'm an 18-year-old student living in London. I'm also the great-grandson of Auschwitz survivor Lily Ebert. Being a member of what is now known as the fourth generation is a huge part of my identity. In recent years, I have had the privilege of speaking alongside my wonderful great-grandmother about her incredible Holocaust testimony, and I know that she is nothing short of remarkable. I still find it hard to comprehend all that she went through, and the courage and determination that she has shown throughout her life. Now, I work with my great-grandmother to educate others about the Holocaust. We tell people across the world about Lily's happy childhood, her wonderful parents and siblings, and how it all changed when the Nazis occupied Hungary in 1944. We tell people about the horrors of Auschwitz-Birkenau, slave labour camps and concentration camps. We tell people about how entire communities were destroyed. We tell people that we are lucky that some of Lily's family survived. In most places, no one was left to remember or to mourn. We tell people about Lily's move to Israel and about how she rebuilt her life. And we tell people about how proud she is of our large family now. We try to educate people across the world all the time. We currently have over 1.5 million followers on TikTok, and we use social media to teach the next generation, my generation. In 2020, Lily and I co-wrote our book, Lily's Promise, so that even more people could read Lily's incredible story and learn from the past. These last years with my incredible great-grandmother have been so special, and I've learned more about her than I ever knew before. She is a true inspiration. Today, we are marking Holocaust Memorial Day. Every year, in the lead up to the 27th of January, the date on which Auschwitz-Birkenau was liberated, people come together to remember the victims of the Holocaust. It is now more important than ever that we listen to people like my great-grandmother. We must remember their stories and take time to remember those who are no longer able to speak for themselves. The theme for this year's Holocaust Memorial Day is one day. Lily knew that if she survived Auschwitz, she must tell the world about what happened to her there. She knew that one day in the future, she would be called a witness. And I know that one day in the future, I will carry on her legacy. I will be her witness to the next generation. And as you listen today to my great-grandmother, we are inviting you to be her witness too. I'd now like to introduce my great-grandmother, Auschwitz survivor Lily Ebert, BEM.
I am Lily Ebert. I am a Holocaust survivor. I want to tell you about my story because in a few years' time, I won't be able to. It will become a history. I was born in Hungary, the oldest of 6 children. When the Nazis occupied Hungary, we had to give up everything. My brother knew things would get even worse. He hid a few items of jewelry, including my golden pendant in the heel of my mother's shoe. When I was 20, I was deported to Auschwitz-Birkenau, along with my mother, my younger brother, and 3 of my sisters. We traveled in cattle trucks, and the conditions were indescribable. People begin to die. As we traveled, my mother said, maybe we should swap shoes. And we did. After 5 days, we arrived to Auschwitz. My mother, my youngest sister, and my brother were sent straight to the gas chambers. I never saw them again. I still find hard to talk about Auschwitz. How do you describe a factory of death? A place for industrial killing. How? The Nazis shaved our heads and took away our clothing. By chance, I was just able to keep my shoes. When the heel of my shoes were worn out, I moved the jewelry and kept it safe in hiding in a piece of bread. It survived along with me and is the only thing what I have for my childhood. I wear it every day. After Auschwitz, I was sent to Leipzig to work as a slave labor for the Nazis. I was finally liberated from Allied forces in 1945. I had looked after my 2 younger sisters and kept them with me to be safe. We moved to Israel, where we began to rebuild our lives. Later, I came to the UK. Hundreds of members of my extended family were murdered during the Holocaust. I am telling you what took place there because they cannot. I promised myself, if I survive against all the odds, I will do all I can to share my story for myself and for those who cannot, who hasn't survived. And I do. I am a witness. I speak to students because I want them to know what happened. But I know that there will come a time when I can't do this anymore. I am so happy that in these last few years I have been able to share my story alongside my great grandson Dov. He will continue to share my story when I am no longer able to. The world should never, ever forget the most terrible crime against history, against humanity. Never.
Eile mali rachamim, shocheine b'maromim, hamtzei menucha nechona, al kanefei השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים לנשמות ששת מיליוני אחינו בני ישראל, אנשים, נשים וטף שנהרגו ושנשחטו שנחנקו ושנשרפו ושנקברו חיים בידי הנאצים ועוזריהם יימח שמם באושוויץ מיידניק טרבלינקה מאטהאוסן ברגן-בלזן ובשאר מחנות ההשמדה ומסרו נפשם על קדושת השם בעבור כולנו מתפללים לעילוי נשמתם לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירם מסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתם בגן עדן תהא מנוחתם אדוני הוא נחלתם וינוחו בשלום על משכבם ונאמר Amen.
Hello, my name is Tariq Ahmed, Lord Ahmed of Wimbledon, and I'm Minister of State at the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. Holocaust Memorial Day is a powerful reminder that we must never let history repeat itself. Together we are paying tribute to the 6 million Jewish men, women, and children murdered during the Holocaust, as well as all the other victims of Nazi persecution and subsequent genocides. I'm greatly honored to be joining you here today. I'm now going to read a poem called The Butterfly, written by Pavel Friedman at the Theresienstadt concentration camp on the 4th of June, 1942. Pavel Friedman was later deported to Auschwitz, where he died. The Butterfly. He was the last, truly the last. Such yellowness was bitter and blinding, like the sun's tear shattered on stone. That was his true colour, and how easily he climbed, and how high. Certainly climbing he wanted, to kiss the last of my world. I have been here 7 weeks, ghettoized. Who loved me have found me. Daisies called to me, and the branches also of the white chestnut in the yard. But I haven't seen a butterfly here. The last one was the last one. There are no butterflies here in the ghetto.
My God, oh my God, may these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the water, the lightning in the sky, man's prayer.
Thank you for joining us for today's event. The UK will continue to work with the Israeli Embassy and communities in the UK and overseas on Holocaust commemoration. Our thanks to Lily, Dov and today's cantor, Johnny Turgle, for joining us, and to Ben Andrew and Helena Vince for the musical accompaniment. Thank you and goodbye.